So Tom Senior is in the shed and we're just pulling it to parts, cleaning it up and then putting it back together. Interestingly, the riser, which is down here, looks like an original part. It seems to have been scraped in, which is great news. And even with it being scraped in, this screw for the knee is lifting the knee, even without the table on it, right the way to the top. So I've got plenty of length on the screw. The riser hasn't messed up the travel. You've still got the full travel. I'm cleaning out any of the little oil ways, making sure that when I squirt oil through them, oil gets through. A couple of the bearings have been greased up, which is, you know, fine. The overarm, the lockers work real well. This one's, I'm going to tighten that piece in there, and then your square bolt and locking nut go into it. I had to take the table off because I could see scoring here, which is not great at the outside, but right on the inside we're back to looking good. Got the table sat on a big work station, and this is the underside which goes against the scored part, and that all looks quite nice and neat. So I'm pretty cheered up. I thought this might all be gnarly and a bit goosed, which would have been disappointing. To take the knee off, I'll be separating this part here. This is all original manufacturer's paint. The oil, when you use the oil holes here and here, squirt through, and it's moving up and down real nice. So I don't see the point. Right, I'll drop things down. We'll have a look inside that knee. Looking inside the knee, you've got a bevel gear drive. This top nut is threaded and captures the crown wheel, as it were, and it's tightened on with an Allen key that comes in from the side. So it's difficult to see, but Allen key comes in from the side, and the bevel gear has got a taper pin that drives in. So as I look at the drive for the knee, it's all been painted up. It's pretty much as new, and I can't imagine any muck's got in that. So looking pretty spiffy there. This middle slot's really extensive, so to stop stuff falling down the back and getting stuck under the front, I just put some protective shields on to stop goop getting stuck on it. I'm going to scuff this off now, just so I'll make sure it's as flat as it can be. Onward ever onward. Bottom of the saddle. So I've just put a little smear of blue on there. I'm going to have a go at seeing whereabouts it's high and proud. I'm not going crazy, you know, I'm not a machine rebuilder, but just out of interest. And if it's really proud in one spot, I'll just knock it down a bit. just with the stone. Right, we're at the saddle. We're going to start putting things back together. So I'll start lining things up, get them ready, and bring you back. So first things first, I'll put the gib strip in so that the thing's not wobbling around. It's tapered in 2 directions. Everything's numbered as number 10, so it looks like it all came out of the same place at the same time. There's a stop screw right at the back, so he'll go in first. That limits the extent of of how far the gib strip goes in. Gib strip goes in from the front. Okay. A quick dry run first there, and now goop it up with slideway oil and screw him down firm into place. Alright, so next up, the saddle lock pins. The original one is a right long blighter, and of course it's banana shaped, so I had to take it all to bits to dig that blighter out, and I'm doing it back together as a 2-piece in proper hardened steel. So we'll adjust that up, make sure we've got the right length, make sure the screw locking screw turns to the right spot, and then tighten those in. Well, that's a bit of a blighter, that was. Right, next up I need to work this drive nut in from up underneath, and that'll take the drive shaft from the hand wheel coming in from the front. So I'll dangle my hand around the back and bolt it in place, capturing that nut at the top with the same bolt arrangement, the same spaces and everything, so that I know that lines up real good with that drive shaft. Right, looking good, tum-ty-tum. Next up, we're going to put the drive nut in for the power feed. There's a big dog on the end of it, and there'll be it's keyed to the shaft. The worm drive goes back up to the gearbox and produces drive to that dog. So put it all back together so it doesn't fall to bits. The little brass yoke opens and closes the dog to allow power transmission, and we'll have a little piece that drops in from the front to move that little brass yoke. Right, I'm just dry running it here to show you how it works, but if you take the shaft out, leave the dog engaged in that position if you don't want to have to take the whole table off. As soon as you open that dog, the nut drops, and then you'll never get it back together. So I'm just going to fill this oil well at the far end. It'll come up on the sight glass, and I'm just checking here the oil will goop through out of that and leaky up into the middle chamber. Alright, so that'll oil up the dog, and you'll get a bit of drippage through onto the drive nut as well. Some stage in its life, the lead screw got bent. Of course it did, because it sticks right out the machine. So I mounted it up in the lathe, and I'm working on the fact that the bit in the machine would have been straight. This boss ran true, this was running out. So then I've taken some persuasion, and I'm just nudging it across. The end here was cut off, rough sawn, so I'm going to, when I've got this running pretty true with my dial gauge, then I'll finish that off. Stick out at the end is Mahusive, and the machine here says, but I've turned up a real tight fitting bush, which has been reamed out to 3/4, which is the size of this, and it's real snug in the spindle tube, so this tail end ain't going to whip around. Okay, so we got that running to, I don't know, 4,000 or 5,000, which is as good as I could get. And you know, I'm not a shafting guy, am I? So we've just put the steady rest in, face that off. I'll flip the job and straighten out yon end. So I've flipped the shaft there, and we'll see that, you know, we've got a 40 thou run out, we're high on this side. So what I'll do is I'll see if I can just give that a bender and get it a wee bit better. Right, so that was the high side, and it was 40 thou high. Alright, well, so on and so forth. I'm going to keep tinkering around. I'm going to check if there's a bender in this and go from there. So, it's a true chuck, so I've took the piece out, put a standard in, clocked the chuck, so I know the chuck's running true, and I'm on 5,000th at this end, which, do you know what? Sod it. I think I'm going to live with that. I don't know how far out I am at this end. Yeah, I've got it down to not bad. So, honestly, I'm going to call that good, because I could podge this up an awful lot more. Don't be tempted. So, shaft is now going back in. Table comes along and knocks off. So it's now working through. So we've wound through the dog now and coming through the worm. We're at the underside of the table. I've cleaned up under here, cleaned this bit, cleaned along here, you know, with sticks and got rubbish out. So this is all clean. There's a couple of dings, so I'm going to just stone those out, smooth them up a little bit. Alright, so we're sliding back on, coming off a big portable workstation thing, roller boxes, and we're sliding in. That's balanced. Get in. Okay, next up, Gib strip. Get this table secured. I'm going to clean this, stone it, put it back. So, I've got the screw in, got table on, and I put it back the same way as it came to pieces. And I put this dial on, and it's back to front. The different sizes. This size goes at yon end, and this big boy comes at this end, which is where all the bearings, all the thrust bearings and all the adjustments should be. Made sense that it would be at this end, but of course I thought, well, someone's put it back together, they must have done it right. No, they haven't. So what I'm doing now is I'm taking the lead screw out. I've kept the worm gear in drive, and I'm winding it down here so that hopefully the dog doesn't drop out. I'll wind it until it's a worm drive, so it won't slack backwards and forwards. It'll just stay where you wind it to. I'll unwind it until I get right to the end of the worm drive. It'll stop driving, then I'll put it back in and drive it back in from this end. If I'm lucky, I'll get it on. If not, table off again. But yeah, got that in, and now with the table pulled all the way out and all the way to the far end wound out, turns out, yeah, the handles clash, and that's because having shortened the lead screw, it's just not quite long enough to clear. But hey, that's an extreme of movement. Am I happy? Yep, I should Coco. I put the original slide for this lock in to check the length on to make sure it was about my screw was sticking out, not too far and not too little, just right. I put that little blighter in, and of course straight away I couldn't get him out. That is the worst scribe in the world, but it's got a heck of a magnet on it. I couldn't get him in the hole, and that was the reason that I made up my retrieval tool. The centre of my propelling pencil, this is where the rubber used to live. I ground down a little circular neodymium magnet, and I was quite surprised it pulled that sucker out. Well, that is a bacon saver. I thought I was taking the table off. Anyway, happy days, I'm not. You can go back in there. He slides in nicely. Another job ticked off. So we're working on the front end still. I've put an oiler cup in here from Harrison Lubricants. I've put an oiler cup in here, same thing. And I'll put a threaded oiler cup in here. These are 1/4 inch push fit, and I think that was UNF threaded. So good. There's a new push-in sight glass gone on, so we're making steady progress. Up at the back end of the table, or the back end of the unit or whatever, when we're pulled right out, the standard table drive arm isn't long enough, so this one on this unit is a treble extension. So I've taken him to pieces and put him back together. It's a simple job to take it off. You take this boss off up at the top end on the gearbox, right up here, which is held on with 2 screws. He slips down over there, and then knock the pin out, tapered pin, out of the drive shaft and put him back on the opposite way. That's the easy way of getting this thing off. When you take this bottom screw out, you're going to get oil dripping, so we've drained this box. While I was at the table drive, the full extent and length and movement of the table, the drive arm was too short. So what I've done, I've taken the largest diameter bar, I've cut off the knuckle. The knuckle was absolutely bob solid on the job, so to the extent, you know, you just couldn't see if it's 1 piece of metal or 2 pieces of metal. It did have a pin through it, so I drilled that out. I tried to sweat it off, it wouldn't come off. So end of the day, I parted it. So I parted it off, taken down the diameter of the shaft, threaded it, made a spare section which is slightly bigger, just so I kept good wall thickness, and I'm going to sweat the knuckle back on. We've cross drilled this, so the whole thing should basically go back together but longer. So I've done an alignment hole. I might have gone off centre, I might have gone off centre with that hole. So I'm going to sweat this on, line it up with an awl, and then we'll have a try of it. And there she is, smoking away. Took it up to blue, dropped it in. That is a tight fit. I won't need the pin, but I'm going to pin it anyway.
Right, treble extension 1, 2 and 3. Top piece we've lengthened. I'm going to in the future make a longer central section. The bottom section stuffed into that knuckle joint, can't move that. We've pretty much nailed the longest bit, but now I've had to cut a groove out and relieve the saddle, so that when that middle section can slide right over the knuckle, so that at its shortest, tightest, it's not jamming the table from coming right in over. Right, so table's flat, horizontal, makes that arm the shortest it can possibly be, and there's your middle section going over the knuckle. The key's still in drive, and I can't budge the table any further, so I've got room to spare as well. Brilliant. And that little clearance will allow a bit of arc when the table goes up and down, and a bit of room for movement. Smashing.
So getting this little cover on was a bit of a chew, so what I've done, I've cross drilled it so that I can put the pin in with the cover in situ. Usually you take the cover off, then take the pin out. It's just an easier way of getting things done. We took the gearbox cover off, refitted the shaft, cleaned the gasket, and this time, because I always had leaking, I've just painted it. I just put a thick layer of paint on, left it to dry for a week. The same goes down here. Thick layer of paint, let it dry for a week, then put the oil in. At the spindle nose, we've taken this faceplate off to expose the roller bearing there. It looks quite good. There's no real play in the spindle, so I've cleaned it all out and I'll repack that with grease, put the faceplate back on. So we are making progress. Quite nice because there's no difference in the depth here. So this front face hasn't been all knocked to hell. So we're winning, we're getting there. So pretty much the front end, good. So I'm gone, smashing.